The Darksiders franchise on Steam Deck, thanks to THQ Nordic for providing Darksiders Genesis and 3. This franchise I haven't played it in a while, but I remember playing it a while ago. I have the original Darksiders 1, the original PC version over here that is no longer for sale. But we got Darksiders Warmastered Edition, which is verified. Darksiders 2 Deathinitive Edition, which is also the quote-unquote remastered version. I don't have the original unlisted version on PC. Then we got Darksiders 3, which came out a while back. I played it for a few hours, when it came out actually, which is not verified, it's playable. And finally, Darksiders Genesis. This one came out a while back as well, but I didn't have it, so now we have the entire franchise, so let's get into it right away. Alright, so the very first Darksiders, the original PC version that is not for sale anymore on Steam. Again, the very first version of the game. And as you can see, the frame times are not great, even if I disabled the FPS cap. But when it comes to the game itself, it uses very little resources, obviously. And this was more akin to God of War from back then. God of War 1 and 2 are a clear influence for this one. But again, this is the version that you cannot buy anymore. You can find it in the high seas, but that's about it. It's basically unlisted. But I wanted to quickly show you this one. You can run it at 90 FPS. But this is the original non-remastered edition. Just for the memes, to show you what it looks like and what it plays like, because we're going to play the remastered one in a second. But as you can see, as soon as there is a lot of transparencies, it can drop below 90. So my advice for this one is to just play it at 60. Alright, so now the Warmastered edition. This is a remastered version, and well, we got these two new options, and in the advanced options there's a lot of new things. One of them that I recommend on higher-end PCs is FSAA, full screen anti-aliasing. But on the Steam Deck, I highly recommend FXAA. And FSAA makes us drop performance below 60 in some parts. Then when it comes to the resolution, it should be full 16:10 to use the entire screen, but it's 16:9, even if I change the resolution. When I restart the game, it goes back to 16:9. So to fix this, I recommend you go exclusive full screen, put 720p, and then go back and put 800p. That should give you complete 16:10. I have to do this each time I start the game. It's probably a bug, but if you're running into that issue, that's the workaround, to say it in some way. Now we have the entire screen to work with. It's perfection. That's how it should be. And now let's actually play the game. As you can probably notice, it runs worse than the original, and it's maxing out one core, which should give us space to use FSAA instead of FXAA. So that's disappointing. Not sure why the game is just taking all the work into one core and lowering the GPU clock. But maintaining 90s was basically impossible for me, at least on the OLED Steam Deck. So the original in that way runs better, but this one, they improved basically everything when it comes to the visuals. And also, I don't have the prompts for the controller on the screen sometimes. But again, it's not a smooth combat as God of War 2, obviously. That's just a completely different ballpark. But I mean, I enjoyed this game. I just would lock it to 60 because there are points when it can drop into the upper 50s and we can do nothing about it. And again, when you launch the game for the first time, you gotta flip back the resolution to 720 and then to 800p in order to get proper 16:10. Not sure how they missed that when they were doing the verification, because this game is verified. But it's just maxing out one core. Just do this. Go here. Frame rate limit to 60. And this should give you a good result. When it comes to battery especially. But again, here in moments like this with a good amount of effects, that's when it drops into the 50s. But that 60 FPS lock is for moments where this doesn't happen and there's potential battery life savings. Because again, if you're not maintaining 90s and we're fluctuating between 60 and 90, I think you're better off just solving 60 in the first place. But it's a fun game. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it, especially if you like games in a similar vein to the first 2 or 3 God of War games. For Darksiders 2, the Deathinitive edition, this is the latest version. There's actually some interesting stuff. First of all, there's a beta that I do not recommend you use on Steam Deck that adds TX12, but that adds shader compilation stutter. Then when it comes to compatibility, I'm using the latest Proton GE. The normal Proton that the Steam Deck recommends really didn't work right for me. I also disabled the Steam overlay because I had some visual bugs. On the options menu, I'm using something like this. Please have full screen on, otherwise the game crashes for me. Same with VSync. Sometimes when it's off, the game just crashes. And you need to use a stick to move in the menu, not the arrows, which is weird. Shadow quality, don't put it on the highest, it will destroy your performance. Anti-aliasing, high is fine. Maybe put the shadows here instead of here. They have a higher resolution, but they still look good enough. And well, let's get into the game. Alright, so as you can probably notice, first of all, this game is verified, and second of all, well, the game has a lot of stuttering, at least for me. Very random spikes in the frame time. Sometimes it was fine. When I first launched the game, I had no problems. Then when I quit the game, it just started doing this endlessly and I couldn't fix it. Since this game is verified, I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe it's just a me issue. Sometimes the stutter was basically unbearable. That's why I had to enable VSync and full screen, because otherwise the game was crashing and stuttering. But now I only have stuttering to contend with, and this is weird. I don't know why this is happening. I saw some videos of people playing this even at 60 Hz, which I'm going to enable right now. The game still has this problem. I couldn't figure it out. The first time I launched it, it was perfectly fine at 90 FPS, but now it's just stuttering every few seconds. I really don't know what's going on. I tried everything. Multiple Proton versions, I'm now on Proton GE, but this just makes the game unplayable for me. I saw on the internet solutions to the stuttering problem from 9 years ago, and this is not an issue of the original PC version. This is on the Deathinitive edition, so I remember this, yeah, when this came out, the Deathinitive edition, yes, not Definitive, it's Deathinitive. This run worse than the original PC port that is no longer on Steam, but it just baffles me that I have to deal with this. This is weird. Alright, so now I disabled the in-game VSync and restarted the game as the game asked, and I think it's even worse now, actually. The stutter got even worse. I'm just locked to 60 to make it easier, quote-unquote, for the game. But it doesn't seem to matter. So if you guys know how to fix this, please let me know. I'm very interested in being able to fix this because it's verified, and again, only the first time I launched the game it was stutter free. But I deleted the Proton files, tried many Proton versions, full screen on, full screen off, minimum settings, maximum settings, VSync on, VSync off, allow tearing. I tried basically everything. I've been hours troubleshooting this, and I have been unable to remove this annoying stutter every few seconds. So if you have any way to get it to run properly, please let me know. And if you have the same issue, also let me know. I want to see if I'm the only one, because this game is verified and it shouldn't have this issue. Another thing that this could be is just maybe a Steam Deck OLED exclusive issue. Because I saw videos of people playing this, but on the LCD Steam Deck. And some older games with the 90 Hz refresh rate sometimes have weird bugs on the Steam Deck OLED. So again, let me know your experience with this game on Steam Deck, especially if you have the OLED version. I'm very much interested in knowing. So let's jump into the next one. Darksiders 3, this one is an Unreal Engine 4 game. I recommend windowed mode, 1152 by 720, so we can control the sharpness using this. So you can put whatever sharpness that you want, and you get a small performance increase. Then basically a mix of medium and high settings. Why no low shadows and low post-processing and foliage? Well, if you put this on low, foliage is gone. If you put shadows on low, shadows are gone. It looks horrible without this, in my opinion. So my advice is to actually keep it like this and target 45 FPS. So I know this game came out in 2018, but honestly, it just runs very poorly. I think it's probably a thing with early UE4 games, that they learned to optimize a little bit more for it later, I guess. And this is more like a Souls-like game in comparison to the others that were more quote-unquote God of War-esque. This feels more like a Souls game, yeah. So again, with foliage on low, you wouldn't have any grass whatsoever. It would be like only the flat texture to the ground. So while that sucks that we have to do that, it's either that with 45 FPS or not hitting 60s. I think this area is pretty important because it's more of a hub area that you get into, and you have lots of foliage into the distance in this section. If you look down, the game basically craps itself when it comes to performance. So after showing you the demanding part, quote unquote, here it is more like a dungeon with smaller enemies. And well, while it's a lot smoother than the part that I showed you looking into the distance with lots of foliage, this being an early UE4 game, I call it early, but it was, yeah, 2018, that's pretty early UE4, at least for me. It still has issues. It seems to be like traversal stutter. Doesn't seem to be shader compilation stutter, just traversal stutter, which, yeah, is still annoying, but still happens to many games even to this day. I'm not saying that's okay, but you can notice that it's a pretty common issue even in older UE4 games. I also now lowered the effects to the lowest setting, so we don't have screen space reflections, because once I go to this area, even without the screen space reflection, here likes to drop below 45. I'm not entirely sure what's wrong with the game. That randomly in some spots it hard locks to 30 something FPS. So we got that traversal stutter, but then we get to, again, certain points, especially the foliage heavy ones. This one is in a dungeon, but still. This point seems to be like the area between a loading zone or something. Here I drop pretty damn low. So I'm very, very confused in that regard. I don't know what's going on. Those random drops are annoying. Yeah, here. If I look at this place, for some reason, I drop performance like crazy. So those random drops there, I don't know exactly what causes them, but it's annoying AF, especially in a game like this, that if you die, basically the enemies respawn, like I'm doing right now. I do not like doing that, but in this case it seems to be absolutely necessary, because those random locations, no matter which settings I'm using, they just drop to the low 30s or the mid 30s with horrible frame times. Locking it to 30 seems to be the best way to do it, which, again, for a game that released 7 years ago, that shouldn't be an issue. Especially for Steam Deck. We played a lot of games in the past on Steam Deck that are more demanding and look better than this one. You can also force DX12 by adding this line to your launch options. DX12, restart the game, and it will launch on DX12 when it comes to that. But again, you get that traversal stutter plus shader compilation. But now looking into the distance is completely fine. We no longer hard lock to 30 something FPS. So when it comes to those things, the game is significantly better on DX12, but some objects are completely black, which I couldn't find any, but I saw on the internet many people complaining about that when forcing DX12. So completely black textures and models in some parts. And another huge issue is that the cutscenes before each boss make the game crash. So yeah, DX12 is fantastic if we had a shader compilation option as well, because after playing a bit of the game, you should be able to have no shader compilation stutters. But at the same time, before a boss, you need to skip the cutscene. And maybe you don't know that a boss is coming and the cutscene shows up and boom, you lose a lot of progress. Because you were playing on DX12 and the game decides to crash on those cutscenes. So on this one, I just would say play on DX11 with the traversal stutter, maybe lock it to 30 FPS, but in problematic areas such as this one, it's going to drop no matter what. So 30 FPS with DX11, and if you don't mind crashing before the cutscenes at every boss fight, you can also do DX12, but you have the shader compilation stutter. So choose your poison basically. And finally, Darksiders Genesis, thanks to THQ Nordic for providing this one for this video. So this one is also verified, but by default we don't have the font on a large scale. So I highly recommend extra large font for the Steam Deck, so it's nice to have that option. Then when it comes to the settings, we have 800p. And this is also Unreal Engine 4, but it's more of a top-down game. So medium shadows and medium effects. Let's see if we can get 90s. I played very little of this game. I don't remember. I think I played at a friend's house like in 2020, before the virus. So yeah, I would say keep it locked to 60. There will be some drops into the 50s, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. The art, I think it still holds up. We are, again, 6 years since this came out. This came out in 2019. And this seems to be a good use of UE4 in comparison to Darksiders 3. So despite the sacrifices in shadow and effects quality, the game still looks pretty good, and you don't lose a lot of graphical fidelity. I would say there was a stutter there when I mounted the horse, but overall it's been pretty stable. Of course, this is just the beginning of the game. We're probably going to get more effects on screen later, but just the nature of which camera angle this game uses makes it easier to run, generally speaking. But the fact that you can increase the text size so much makes it 1,000 times more playable. When I saw the small text, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to see anything. But no, now that I found that option, which should be enabled by default, but in my case it wasn't. If it's a bug, I highly recommend the the developer to add that as a Steam Deck default option, because the game is verified, but if it starts with small text, people will be thrown off. Most people don't go into the options menu. But this is a 60 frames per second game, 2.5 to 3 hours of battery, I would say, on a full charge. We're now at 55% battery with 1 hour left. Swap characters. Yeah, definitely I like using War more. Maybe because I played the original and I have good memories of it. That's why maybe I'm biased. But this game feels pretty good, actually. I'm surprised I haven't played it on my own on the channel. Or maybe I played it once and I forgot. I completely forgot there was a Darksiders Genesis game. Which sounds weird to say, but here I am. There's so many games. So yeah, that's the entire Darksiders franchise on Steam Deck. I don't have the original Darksiders 2 on Steam. It was delisted before I even got the chance to buy it. So the Deathinitive edition, if you have a way to tell me how to avoid that stutter that I showed you in the video, which again, I don't know why it happened. The first time I launched the game it was fine. Then I would recommend it, but I wouldn't recommend Darksiders 3 on Steam Deck, unless you are fine by playing it at 30 FPS. But honestly, I mean, the game is fun, don't get me wrong, but with that performance, I'd rather just skip it on Steam Deck and just play this one, which is Genesis, and the second one if you can avoid the stutter. But if you can make the second one not stutter, you can absolutely play this one, the first game, and the second one. The third one, again, just due to technical issues, I just wouldn't recommend it on deck. Considering the age of that game, I think we should at least get 45 FPS consistently. I mean, it's a 2018 game we're talking about. I know it's an early UE4 attempt or whatever, but still, they could patch it. I mean, let's be honest here. But this franchise is usually pretty cheap on Steam sales, so I highly recommend you pick up the first one and the second one. If I can find a fix for the stuttering on the second one, I'll let you know. But as of right now, those are the Darksiders games on Steam Deck. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did taking a look at them on the go. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.